Fabulous. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Alyssa, for inviting us to be here. And as mentioned, we work for Iowa Donor Network. I am the community engagement coordinator for the western half of the state. And Emily is an organ donation coordinator, and she'll be able to share more about her position in the presentation. As you have questions that come up, please feel free to just raise your hands, and we'll pause and talk through them, and then we can take questions at the end that you have as well. So we're really excited to present about the gift of life that organ and tissue donation provide. And just a background of our organization, our abbreviation is IDN, and our mission, vision, and values you can see there on the screen. I'm going to highlight our mission is working together with the communities that we serve to transform lives through the gift of organ and tissue donation. And you can see there our guiding principles as well. Those are the focus of all of our work, and we want to keep that in mind as we work with hospitals. We get to serve over 120 hospitals throughout the state, and there are 3 transplant centers where people go to get an organ transplant. So that's the University of Iowa, the VA hospital in Iowa City, and then Methodist downtown in Des Moines. And then we get to work with all of the out-of-hospital agencies as well. When I say we're working together with communities, we get to work with medical examiners, funeral homes, first responders, so firefighters, EMS, police. We are really thankful for those community connections. And then we work with processors as well to make sure that the gifts that are given get to the right place and in the right condition. We also get to work with the Iowa Lions Eye Bank. They are an organization that focuses on helping people recover their sight, and so that is through cornea donation. So, bumping back up there, information about our organization. We are a nonprofit organ procurement organization, or OPO, and we also are a tissue recovery agency. Not every OPO recovers tissues. But we are lucky to have a dedicated tissue recovery suite at our Altoona office. So we have tissue recovery coordinators who work and do the surgical recovery of those gifts. And then, of course, we are open all hours of the day for any kind of response that we need. And we have social workers on site. We call them family advocates. And then our tissue recovery team and our communications center are constantly operating as well.
What's tissue recovery?
That's a great question. We'll get deep into it, but tissues are specifically regulated by the FDA there. You can see in the second down on the left. So organ donation is regulated by CMS. That's like heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, and then the tissue donation is every other piece of your body that could be donated. So skin, bones, ACL, those kinds of things. And we'll go into it deep. So then we have 2 offices, one in North Liberty and one in Altoona. First of all, as we're diving into this conversation, obviously this can be kind of a heavy thing to talk about. So I just want to acknowledge, I know several of you probably have connections to someone who has had a transplant or someone who has been a donor. And I just want to say thank you for those gifts that those donors have given. And then it is our honor and our responsibility to walk with families through that process. So keeping that focus in mind of why we do what we do, here's a story in super tiny text, I apologize, but from Venkatesh. He is a liver recipient and then has stayed connected with Iowa Donor Network afterwards. But Venkatesh had needed a new liver to survive, and he is very thankful to his donor, wants to express that as often as he can. So he wants to, his quote here is that you too can make a difference in someone's life by becoming an organ donor. The difference that has allowed him to be around to be a father to his kids. And Then this is Andy Pavlovek's story. Andy Pavlovek was a donor in 2021, so just a couple years ago. Andy was a really involved dad, and he highlighted to his two sons the importance of recycling all the time. And so like the kids' grandparents would often be throwing something out, and then the kids would be like, "Oh wait, no, Dad says you can recycle that." And so Andy lit this fire of passion for caring for the earth in his boys. And when Andy had this tragic accident, the boys got behind the idea of organ donation because they knew that their dad had one more thing that he could recycle, which was himself. And so Andy's gifts saved 5 people's lives through organ donation. And then the reason that I want to highlight Andy's story is to show you the span of the impact. So tissue donation is so powerful and so important because it can transform people's lives all across the country and even internationally. So you can see there Andy's gifts were not only in the USA, but also traveled to Saudi Arabia. And tissue donation can help people for many years because after tissues have been processed and packaged, they can last in that packaging for up to 5 years. So a donor's gifts are not just bound to one point in time. They can continue on as the perfect matches become available. Any questions on Andy's story or his impact? All right, fabulous. Like I said, we have the honor to walk with donor families. That's such an important part of our mission, is supporting donor families through the process. And in my own donor family experience, I was so glad to have the IDN professionals in the hospital helping us through that really awful time. And they were professional and they were kind. And that's like really what you need. Just you need things to be a little bit easier and have a few less decisions that you have to make. And so we get to do that work, which is great. And it provides comfort knowing that something good can come from death. Okay, so there's 2 basic donation scenarios. One is living donation. So you've probably heard of that, like you donate a kidney to a family member or a close friend, or you donate part of your liver. Those are the most common forms of living donation. And of course, we support living donation. It just happens at transplant centers, the transplant centers that we partner with. What we get to work with is families who have a loved one who has died, either through brain death or circulatory death, and then their donation of organs and tissues. So the details for organ donation, we have up here the 6 different organs that can be donated: lungs, pancreas, kidneys, heart, liver, and intestines. And before I was working at IDN, I didn't even know that all of that was possible. So that's kind of amazing. And with those 6 donations, a person could save up to 8 lives. Does anyone have a guess as to why that is? Yes? Yes, lungs and liver and kidneys can all be split. Usually, the liver is not split in deceased donation. That's only in living donation. So that's why we say 8 for the lungs and kidneys. Excellent. Now, the thing that has really surprised me about organ donation is, like, this is such an important gift, but we have so many people waiting on organ donation still. So, like, why is that happening? It's because organ donation is so incredibly rare. So there have to be very specific circumstances for organ donation to happen. And that means that the organs have to be healthy enough to make it from one person to another person. And for that to happen, the organs have to be receiving oxygen so that the cells don't break down. And so that means that a person who is donating has to die in a hospital with ventilator support. So since it's like all of those specific scenarios, The statistic is that only 3 in 1,000 people die in the way that they could be an organ donor. That doesn't mean that they're signed up. That just means that those people are candidates. So you can see just like how incredibly important this gift is because of how rare it is. And then the pathway for organ donation, of course we'll break down tissue donation next, is that the patient arrives at the hospital and always is being treated for survival. So your doctor's Hippocratic oath, they are treating to save your life. And it's really important that Iowa Donor Network works in collaboration with our hospitals, but doesn't work on top of their work, right? So we don't want to be influencing the decisions of doctors, and the doctors want to be just focusing on their work without having to worry about if someone is registered as a donor or not. So doctors are working their best to save lives, and then if the doctor determines that the patient will not survive, then it hands off to our team to start talking to the family. And so doctors, physicians make a referral to, or nurses. There's lots of people who can refer to Iowa Donor Network. We're lucky to have referrals from our first responders and hospice partners as well. But in a case where someone is not going to survive, a referral comes to us, and then we work through authorization, so making sure that the person has chosen to be registered as a donor, or if they haven't made a decision, that their family authorizes on their behalf. And then there's a medical history questionnaire. And then it takes a while to work up those organs to make sure that they are healthy enough for transplant. So there's this medical workup period. And then after all of that has happened, and the organs have found matches, that's the organ placement, then the surgery can happen. And so the surgery happens all at once, and it is usually done by a team of doctors from each hospital that is going to be receiving the transplant. So like I was able to observe a case where there was a team who had a patient who needed a new liver. And so they came in and they partnered with the team from Vanderbilt who had a patient who needed new lungs. And so those two teams of surgeons worked together on the case. And the team from Minnesota took the liver with them. We helped organize the transportation for that to happen. And the team from Vanderbilt took the lungs with them for their patient, and we helped organize their transportation as well. The only organs that sometimes get placed after recovery are kidneys. And so we found matches. Iowa Donor Network helped continue the search for matches for the kidneys, because kidneys can be stable on a kidney pump for up to 48 hours. So that we have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of timing with kidneys. I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Emily here. She is going to talk through her role a little bit, and then if you guys have any questions about the process, we can go deeper into that as well.
Thanks, big guy. How's everyone doing? Doing okay? That was kind of a lot, but I think Jackson absolutely just nailed the part of my job that I do. I'm going to actually go back a slide here and just kind of talk a little bit about what my job is. So I have a background in ICU nursing. I have been a neurotrauma ICU nurse for the last 5 years, and I made the switch over to the Iowa Donor Network. I do have that impact with both of my parents being tissue donors. And so the great work that the Iowa Donor Network has done for me, has been tremendous. They were there spot on the day of, the days after, the months, and the years after. So their impact for me has been great. And the fact that I get to pass that along now to other donors, to other recipients, families, is such a great impact for me. So again, a little bit of background on me. With being the ICU nurse, I was making those early referrals. So when a patient becomes critically ill, of course, we're doing everything we can at the bedside to help try and treat basically have that positive outcome. Unfortunately, sometimes that just doesn't always occur. And so those referrals to the Iowa Donor Network come where we can kind of deep dive into their history. Would they be potentially suitable for an organ or a tissue donation? So I mainly work on the organ side of things. I know Jackson's going to go into tissue, which is a total different side of things. I'm more on the organ side. So I work with patients on the ventilator. I mainly am there after this authorization. So Jackson had explained that once consent is obtained, the social workers come on board and obtain that authorization, whether a patient is registered or not. I think oftentimes that can be something, that you hear in the news. Well, someone wasn't registered, or that was not something that they had ever signed up for, or they had signed up for this, but they wouldn't want this. So I know, like I said, you can kind of get into the weeds on that a little bit. But for my part of my job, after authorization is obtained, I help get that medical history. I look into, what kinds of tests have they had? Have they had a CT? Have they had labs? Positive cultures that we work up. If they have some type of infection, we can treat all that. And then doing the medical workup that is needed for the CMS. So every organ, whether you're working up a heart, there are certain tests that you need to be able to safely allocate a heart, that transplant centers are looking for. Same with lungs, liver, it's all different for each organ. And then once that medical workup is kind of all finalized, that can take a process of about 3 to 5 days, which can be at times helpful, but then also, too, sometimes families are ready to say goodbye. And we always try to work diligently. We're in hospitals with higher levels of care in the state of Iowa. Just to name a few, the ones here in central Iowa, Mercy One in downtown Des Moines, Methodist, Lutheran, and then you can kind of go out to the eastern side of the state and go to the University of Iowa, hospitals in Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Mason City, Fort Dodge. So my area of work kind of covers the entire state, which I'm able to make that outreach, and that I feel like is the most satisfying for my job. And then we go into the organ placement. So we have certain teams that I'm working with the workup, and then there is the team that works on allocation, meaning finding those matches for those selected recipients, and organizing the transportation that they need to get those teams in to help recover those gifts. And then we have the OR crew. Once you get to the organ recovery and you get to the operating room, we have a selected team that just solely works in there. And when I tell you, every single one of them that I encounter is absolutely great. Although not on my team, they're all wonderful, and they absolutely get the job done. Is there any quick questions kind of about the pathway? And kind of what the process looks like. Has anyone ever experienced that? Jackson, very good. Jackson. Yeah.
Well, just a question. I think about, in my dad's case, which was over 50 years ago, he was an organ donor, and he passed away in the emergency room. Whatever, and he was an organ donor, and in that case, we notified the hospital and whatever that he had been an organ donor, but there wasn't anybody there at the hospital that knew anything, or at that point, what to do and how to turn and whatever. So how do you know? And I think you mentioned, were there 108 hospitals or whatever?
There's over 120 hospitals. Over 120 hospitals that we work with in the state, yeah.
In the state, out of how many?
Oh, all of the hospitals in Iowa.
Yeah,
so
each county has a county hospital. So
Mhm.
that, that's 99 or whatever. But so part of it depends on where you wind up if something happens or an emergency case and then you pass. And so the pathway sometimes can be complex. You can be a donor, but you may wind up in the wrong spot to become an active donor.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's, I mean, one of the reasons why the statistic is so low for people who die in a way that can then be organ donors. So luckily, tissue donation provides a lot of hope on that front. Even if you can't be an organ donor, you can still transform lives through tissue donation. But yeah, there's some hospitals that we work with that just, they don't have ventilator support, and transportation isn't possible. So there are, cases where it's just not possible, which is unfortunate.
But you have to start as a donor first to even get that possibility of being a helper somewhere down the road, even if you wind up in the wrong spot.
Yes, and that's correct. I think I feel that our kind of team behind the scenes a little bit, when a referral comes in from a hospital, just knowing their name, their date of birth, we can look up their registry status, whether it's in the state of Iowa, whether it's in the state of Wisconsin. You can always look up to see if that patient is registered within that state. And I feel like oftentimes we do run into that, and just because a patient is not registered, might not mean that we might not approach. If a patient is on the ventilator, has a ill prognosis, we still might approach on those types of patients. Just for the sole fact that if I don't know, I guess you can maybe touch a little bit on it also, but just in my experience, the words are kind of hard here. Just trying to expand that gift, as he said, just the number of times that a patient is on a ventilator with that ill prognosis, that doesn't happen as often. And so to try and expand that gift is, what we strive for, but also respecting what the patient and the family has for their loved one. So.
Yeah.
So my driver's license shows on says donor.
Mm-hmm.
Heart.
Yeah.
Does that cover everything?
Yeah, so that donor with a heart designation on your license covers organ and tissue donation. And what it does not cover is donation for research. So if you want to donate for research as well, for medical research, you can make that an extra designation through your MyChart Epic portal, or like in a will or a medical directive, or just make sure your family knows.
Well, it says MED, AEDIR, why? What was that? Medical Advisory Directory?
Yeah, so that would be your your medical advanced director paperwork. If you filled that out with your family members, and like Jackson said, that can be very specific as to, I have seen kind of recently in those advanced directives that some families just state no to organ donation, whether it is on or not on a driver's license. Then that is something that's a legal document stating that we know what your wishes are.
So does age have anything to do with this?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, that's a great question.
I want you guys to take a guess at how old the oldest organ donor in Iowa was.
80.
95. The oldest organ donor was able to donate kidneys at 95, which is amazing. And then tissue donation. How old do you think the oldest organ donor was? Or the oldest, tissue donor was? Yeah, even older, 106. And they were able to donate skin, which is a really amazing gift. And so the people who, my coworkers who I know some people who got to work on that case, and they were just impressed by that donor's gift, and it was able to help lots and lots of people. So.
We had a viewer online that said that her daughter got a pancreas last year.
Oh, fabulous. Glad to hear about that.
No, that's wonderful. No, great questions. Anyone else? kind of before I move along and just talk a little bit about what my day in the life looks like as the organ donation coordinator. Like I said, in the ICU setting, this patient is on the ventilator, so working hand in hand with the medical staff, helping manage the ventilator, medication management. We are all guided in my team by we have our 2 medical directors that kind of basically give us our guides and our orders, our policies, our procedures, so practicing under them, I'm able to modify medications as needed to help improve organ function. We can perform procedures such as a bronchoscopy that is needed for lung workup. That's when the tube kind of goes down, cleans out all the areas of the lungs, sees the tissues, helps open up those bronchioles, and just close monitoring with every. I'm sure you've heard of someone in the ICU. It's kind of day or night. It's those thorough assessments that one slight little change kind of can take a turn, and so helping the nursing role and evaluating that we're talking about evolution of the brain injury, starting from the catastrophic injury and monitoring throughout brain death. We kind of talked about the 2 pathways earlier, the brain injury or the catastrophic injury versus brain death. So the significance in those 2 is in the role of catastrophic brain injury, that patient is taken into the OR and is completely liberated of the breathing tube, any medications that's helping support the patient. Basically just the in a sense going comfort measures, making the patient comfortable while preparing for procurement. And then in other instances, if a patient is legally declared brain death, then that is their legal time of death. That can be at the bedside with medical staff, and that just that role of donation just kind of gives a better higher success rate when transplanting organs, gives those recipients less of rejection rates and things like that. So I'm doing those thorough assessments throughout my day. I am trying to communicate as much with the family and things like that as I can. I have a passion for working at the bedside, but we do have those family advocates, just as Jackson said, that walk families through the process and explain that into great detail while I'm kind of working behind the scenes and working with transplant centers, working with the hospital care team, and other OPOs. So it truly takes a village. We had a conference here about, I think it was earlier in the fall, that just basically we had all of these people lined up as far as like hospital services. I mean, it doubles as what this room is. There are so many people involved. There are so many different areas of donation that truly make the impact. It's not just me. It's not just Jackson. It's not the the OR staff. It goes way beyond that, and it is quite amazing the work that we can do and all of the collaboration that we use to make it possible.
So leading back to the importance of why we do this work, why we do all this collaboration that Emily was mentioning, is because 108,000 men, women, and children, people of all ages, are waiting on a life-saving organ transplant. And a lot of that wait list is kidneys. Over 80% of the wait list is people who are waiting for a kidney. And in Iowa, we have over 580 individuals who are waiting for that life-saving transplant. So this is urgent work. We envision a day where no one dies while they're on the wait list, right? Where everyone gets the transplant that they need. Okay, so that's organ donation. Now we're going to move on over into tissue donation and tissue and cornea donation. So corneas, obviously just the outer layer of your eye and not the entire globe, that can then help restore sight for patients through our collaboration with Iowa Lions Eye Bank. Coastal cartilage you see there is the cartilage of the rib cage used for facial reconstruction surgeries. Bones can be used to promote healing for dental surgeries, really traumatic breaks, those kinds of things. Adipose tissue, fat tissue for healing as well. Tendons and ligaments used for like an ACL reconstruction, so sports injuries. Valves, heart valves are life-saving for especially young children with congenital heart disease. Donated heart valve can grow with them, which is really cool. And then vertebral bodies is a really exciting area that new research and breakthroughs are being done in all the time. So the bone tissue inside your spinal cord, inside your vertebrae, can be used to get stem cells that are then used for immunotherapies. And so those therapies can help organ recipients and people living with cancers such as leukemia. The aortic iliac vessels used for bypass surgery, and then of course veins, and we talked about skin as well. So tons of different gifts that can be given. The average number of impact for one tissue donor is that they can transform the lives of 75 people. It ranges anywhere from 50 to 300. So I'm going to show you a couple of images of tissue grafts. So if you're feeling a bit squeamish, this is your chance to not look. But these aren't like too graphic. Okay, here we go. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner that is a ligament, and with the two pieces of bone connected there, and then bone cubes, and then bone that's been machined. Then we've got a vein there, or an artery at one of those vessels, and then skin graft, and then a heart valve. And so you can see that these tissues in some cases look like they would probably be pretty shelf stable for a while. And I talked about them being able to last for a really long time. It's actually the packaging that expires first before the grafts expire. So that's why tissue donation can impact so many people across the globe, is that through the processing, the genetic markers are removed, and these can be a match for anyone in the world. So you don't have to worry about blood type. You don't have to worry about like proteins not matching up. A tissue graft will be accepted by a recipient in most cases, which is really exciting.
So what is the life of the packaging?
It depends on like the specific type of packaging, but it's up to 5 years. So yeah. Okay, so just to review, organ donation, again, that's an in-hospital process, and the transplantation has to happen within a quick time window, and then requires that huge team of people working together to make it happen. And then tissue donation, even if you're not able to be an organ donor, you can still have that huge impact of tissue donation, which happens out of a hospital setting for the recovery. So it happens in our Altoona office, like I mentioned earlier. We talked about the storage, and that's a smaller team to make that happen, but like less medical staff who have to be involved in the like quick parts of the process. But we of course work with our tissue processors to then get those gifts distributed. So any questions about those two types of donation? Thanks for asking questions. I appreciate it.
Our donations prioritize strictly on first come, first serve, or
Yeah, so the matching process has a lot of things that are taken into account. So first of all, making sure blood type and proteins match is really important, so that the transplant goes well. Making sure that the transplant is the right size. Like a 4'9" person is not going to receive a transplant from like a 6'5" person.
That apply to like heart?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Does that apply to parts and organs and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a bigger person has a bigger liver that wouldn't fit for a person who's a smaller person. And then to really address your question in terms of need, it's like the highest priority of like someone who's really, really sick is going to have a higher priority. And then also someone who is quicker able to get to the hospital, and someone who their transplant team thinks that this would be a good outcome for them. Sometimes people get really sick and get to the point where they like need to do some other medical interventions before they can get a transplant. So then they would go down the list and then back up the list. It's not like you think of the list as kind of like you're waiting in line kind of thing, but there's lots of, each time that we do allocation, it populates a new list. And it's based on all of those factors. So highest need, and then making sure that it's the right fit, and making sure that the location is good as well. Yeah, absolutely. So we get to work with all of the other organ procurement organizations in the country on that national scale. Okay, so a few of us have those individual stories, and when I look at these numbers of organ donors and tissue donors, I think like that's 124 families who've gone through something that I have gone through, that Emily has gone through, that some of you have gone through. Or 1,308 families last year who went through that same process as well. And so like my heart is kind of heavy for that part of it. But that's why like it's so important for us to walk with families through that grief process. And then on the other side of things, like that's, maybe 300 families who get to spend extra time with their loved one. And so, and then maybe 20,000 lives that have been transformed throughout the world, just from last year's impact. So we're so thankful for our donors and for our donor families, and so excited for the recipients as well. Okay, this kind of goes back to answering that question that we had earlier about like the legality of organ donation. So organ donation legally comes from the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, and each state has accepted this into their laws. So like it says there in the first slide, or the first circle, your decision is legally binding. So your family can't afterwards be like, no, we want it to be different. Like this is your care that you're talking about if you want to be a donor or not. So it's an opt-in system. So that's why you have to say yes to being an organ and tissue donor. And if you have not opted in, we'll still ask family if they would like to opt in on your behalf. But if you say no, clearly, then we would not approach that scenario. So it's our responsibility and to both legally and ethically to carry out that donor's decision. So we'll work with families. Sometimes it's really hard for a family going through this process, and so we'll work with them to help find the solution that's best for them. Like maybe the time is just too long for them to go through the whole donation process, but we will honor the donor's decision to donate as much, to give as many gifts as possible. The only case where this is not under first person authorization is if you're under 18, then your family makes the decision for you. Okay, so then there is, of course, another way to donate anatomical donations, and that is through the Deeded Body Program with Des Moines University and the University of Iowa. You can donate your whole body to scientific training. So physicians and other people who are training in the medical field, this is invaluable for their training. My grandmother donated to the DMU deeded body program, and the physicians who were working with her said like she was our first patient, you know. So it's really, really cool to be able to provide that education for people who are training to be doctors. And you can be registered as both an organ donor and through the deeded body programs, but doctors need to study your organ systems, so you can't do both. If you have a preference, it's really important to let your family know what your preference is. The donations that can still happen are corneas and then sometimes skin, depending on the case. Any questions about the deeded body programs?
And it has to be done ahead of time. People know whether you designated, you might have a contract with those two places. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a contract. Yep.
And it happens years in advance.
Yes. Yep. Just like how you can designate on your driver's license years in advance, same kind of idea. Okay, so then we have lots of gifts that we give and support items that we give to families throughout the process. So finger prints, hand prints, heartbeat recordings that could be on your phone or inside of a bear. My niece has a bear with my brother-in-law's heartbeat recording in it, which is really cool. And then resources for children, otherwise grief resources, books, things to play, and then donor quilts generously donated by groups throughout Iowa. We also have online and in-person support groups, and then grief resources to help people through the process. As long as they want our support, we are very glad to provide support to donor families. And really cool, we get to do some in-person events as well. Our candlelight tributes happen on a yearly basis, honoring the gifts of donors, just every year. And then we also have a 5K that honors donors and recipients and donor family members. That's coming up, and I'll show you guys the information for that in a second. But we have a donor memorial garden in Altoona, and really, really cool, we have the opportunity for donor families and recipients to meet each other if they both agree to that meeting. So we can help with the initial correspondence, but for medical privacy reasons, we have to keep people's personal data blocked out. And then if both parties are interested in meeting, we can make that happen. Of course, that's a little bit harder now with social media. You can find out things about people, but we don't let any of people's personal information go. Okay, so the 5K that I talked about, if you are interested in walking or joining in the festivities or running, we have on May 2nd, the Give Life 5K at Raccoon River Park in West Des Moines. So if you know anyone who's interested, if you're interested, we'd love to see you there. And then, of course, any other opportunities in your community that you know of, we would love to hear about. If you're feeling really inspired and want to volunteer with us, we have a volunteer program as well. And just to wrap up, these are the ways that you can register if you're feeling really inspired and haven't registered yet. Online on our website, we have paper registry brochures. As we talked about, the way most people do it is through the DMV on your license. When you get your hunting, fishing, or fur trapping license, Logan Luft was a donor, and in his memory, his family has created Logan's Law, so you can sign up with the DNR. And then most recently, through your MyChart app, when you go to your doctor's office and they have all of your information in your MyChart, your doctors cannot see your donation decisions on Epic, but that's a place that you can say yes or no to donation, and also to donation for research purposes. All right, great. So thank you so much for having us, and I see several questions here, so it's a perfect time to invite Emily back up, and we'll tag team these questions for you guys.